What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you are watching Euphoria Season 3 right now, then you already know this show never holds back. But Episode 5, this one took things to another level. We're talking about a brutal psychological breakdown, a completely surreal Cassie sequence, and an ending cliffhanger that has the entire internet freaking out right now. Today, we're breaking down everything that happened in Episode 5, this Little Piggy, and most importantly, explaining that wild ending. Let's get into it. And yes, massive spoilers ahead. You've been warned. So going into this episode, Rue had barely escaped disaster in Episode 4. That random robbery happening at exactly the right moment ended up saving her from being fully exposed as a DEA informant. It was pure chaos, pure luck, and honestly very on brand for this show. But Episode 5 makes one thing very clear right away, that luck is running out fast. The DEA pulls Rue back in almost immediately. They catch her slipping in her story, remind her that one mistake could put her behind bars for a very long time, and continue pressuring her for information about Lori and Alamo's operation. There's also a really important moment where her handler, Wayne, basically suggests she's already becoming replaceable as a source. And that tells you everything about Rue's position right now. She has almost no control left in this situation. Still, somehow, she walks away without being arrested, at least for the moment. But then Rue makes a huge mistake. Trying to protect herself, she plants cocaine in Magick's locker to shift suspicion away from her. In the short term, it seems clever. In reality, it's the worst person she could have targeted. Magick figures out what happened almost instantly, but instead of confronting Rue directly, she goes straight to Alamo. And honestly, her argument is smart. She points out that Rue should have recognized the voices of the robbers during the earlier incident, since Rue had already been around Lori's circle before. So if Rue claims she didn't recognize anyone, that starts looking extremely suspicious. To Magick, there's only one explanation. Rue is working as a snitch. And the scary part is that Alamo actually listens. This is not somebody who ignores doubt or lets things slide. Once that idea gets into his head, Rue is immediately in serious danger. Now we need to talk about Cassie, because her storyline in this episode goes completely off the rails in the most Euphoria way possible. Cassie's online popularity is exploding. Maddie has been managing her social media presence, pushing her to make more content, more videos, and stay constantly active online. And to be fair, it's working. Her numbers are climbing fast. But things start changing once Brandon gets more involved. He wants to push Cassie's career into a much more aggressive direction, and slowly begins cutting Maddie out of the picture entirely. Then the show hits us with one of the weirdest sequences it has ever done. Cassie imagines herself as this giant monster towering over Los Angeles, full kaiju movie energy, while endless notifications, requests, and online demands rain down on her from every direction. Buildings collapse around her, the city falls apart, and she ends up praying to the Hollywood sign like it's some kind of god. It's completely surreal, but underneath all the chaos, the message is pretty clear. Cassie is losing herself to internet fame, and the people around her are treating her more like a product than an actual person. Meanwhile, Nate Jacobs continues falling apart. After last week's brutal incident with loan shark Naz, including losing his little toe, Nate is more desperate than ever. The debt apparently comes from a failed real estate project connected to a retirement community that never happened, and Naz has made it very clear that he intends to collect no matter what. And honestly, watching Nate in this position feels strange because earlier seasons always presented him as the person in control. Now he's completely powerless, cornered from every direction, and running out of options fast. There's also a scene between Rue and Jules that feels like the show is deliberately messing with the audience. They're hanging out at some guy's apartment. The chemistry between them is obviously still there, and Jules even gives Rue a pretty direct invitation by saying something along the lines of, "If you want me, come get me." But before anything actually happens, the scene abruptly cuts away, and we instead see Jules in bed with the sugar daddy. Later on, the sugar daddy finds something that belongs to Rue inside his apartment and completely panics. Suddenly, he's worried about his family, his reputation, and everything falling apart around him. The scene almost plays like dark comedy, but it also reinforces just how chaotic Rue's entire life has become. Alright, let's talk about that ending. Alamo finally tracks Rue down at a diner while she's sitting with Maddie. And what makes the scene feel so disturbing is how calm he is during the entire interaction. There's no loud threat, no public confrontation, no dramatic outburst. He simply walks over to the table, looks directly at Rue, and quietly tells her to come outside and get in the truck. And after a moment of hesitation, Rue goes. Once inside, his crew takes her phone away and drives her far outside the city to a completely isolated area with nobody around. And when they finally arrive, Kid is already waiting there. From that moment, Rue immediately realizes she's in an extremely dangerous situation and completely under their control. Then comes the most terrifying part of the entire sequence. They force Rue into an intense psychological situation clearly designed to break her emotionally and leave her feeling powerless. Everything about the scene is meant to create fear and desperation. Rue is completely trapped, completely isolated, and totally at their mercy with no way to contact anyone for help. And the show really takes its time building the tension here. Rue remains stuck there through the entire night, exhausted, terrified, and having absolutely no idea what's going to happen next. The atmosphere becomes more uncomfortable with every passing moment because the silence itself feels threatening. Then morning finally comes. And out of nowhere, Alamo suddenly appears riding toward her on horseback while holding a polo mallet. The visual alone feels surreal and horrifying at the same time. He charges directly toward Rue at full speed while swinging the mallet in her direction. Rue screams in absolute panic, and right at that exact moment, the screen cuts to black. No answer, no confirmation, just silence. So, is Rue Bennett actually dead? Personally, I don't think so. At least not yet. But at the same time, I also don't think this scene existed purely for shock value either. What Alamo seems to be doing here is sending a very specific message. He wants Rue completely terrified, mentally shattered, and desperate enough to give him whatever information he's looking for. Because from his perspective, immediately getting rid of her wouldn't actually benefit him. A frightened and emotionally broken Rue is far more useful to him than ending things instantly. And honestly, that idea might be even more disturbing than the cliffhanger itself. Still, there's one detail making fans extremely nervous right now. Reports surrounding episode 6 claim that Rue supposedly does not appear at all. 0 scenes, completely absent from the episode. Which means the show could potentially leave audiences hanging on this cliffhanger for an entire week without giving any real answers about her fate. And remember, a lot of fans have been predicting since the beginning of the season that Zendaya's character might not survive the final stretch of the series. If the writers ever plan to permanently remove Rue from the story, this honestly feels exactly like the kind of setup they would use before a major reveal. And with only 3 episodes left, including a finale already rumored to be one of HBO's biggest and most emotional episodes ever, it's pretty obvious that something massive is still coming before the season ends. That's everything that went down in episode 5 of Euphoria season 3. This episode was chaotic, emotional, completely unpredictable, and it ended with one of the most intense cliffhangers the series has delivered so far. Let me know down in the comments. Do you think Rue survives this situation? Is Alamo actually planning to take things even further? And what did you think about Cassie's absolutely wild storyline this week? And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like because it really helps the channel out. Subscribe so you don't miss the episode's 6th breakdown as soon as it drops next Sunday. I'll see you all in the next one.